I spent an hour with David Lynch in January.
You did?
Yeah, interviewing him.
Was his button, was he
It
wearing?
was, of course it was. White shirt
Closed,
up to here.
white shirt, buttoned.
Black jacket.
Black jacket.
Incredibly nice man. Of course we talked about the Elephant Man, and of course you came up.
Yes. Nobody knows that I produced the Elephant Man.
Well, this is your chance
Yes.
to tell us what it was you saw in Eraserhead that you wanted to give him the Elephant Man.
You know what I saw? And that's a very good question, Stuart. What I saw in Eraserhead was symbolism that was not murky, symbolism that was clear. That baby was a monster. It took over the... I saw everything he wanted to say, surrealistically and symbolically, he said very brilliantly, very clearly. And I said, this guy will be a great filmmaker. And I'm going to grab him first, and he's going to direct this script, The Elephant Man. And he came in, he helped rewrite it, he helped on the makeup, and he helped on the beautiful black and white, photography. David Lynch is a bit of a genius. He really is.
Hello. Welcome to a much delayed episode of Queen is Dead film podcast, which has been absent for the past month. Disappeared, you can say, maybe, because, takes time to process Lynch's films. It takes time to process the abuses we've put in, and it takes time to process the company sometimes you are with. I've been scarred from the Nosferatu episode ever since, and then of course the best of episodes happened and everything. No, I mean, I'm just making excuses. We had 2 or 3 episodes planned, but they just didn't work out to be recorded. So this is gonna be the dumping week of the episodes for essentially last month, because we have already an episode which we have Chris here, so he can attest to being the best episode he's been a part of yet. That will
Again,
drop.
I was mildly traumatized by the experience, as I said.
What episode is this, Chris?
It is our first part of our series on Mission Impossible, where we discussed Mission Impossible, where we tried to discuss Mission Impossible 1, 2, and 3.
Anybody who's listened to a Nosferatu episode should already guess who was part of that episode. Apart from all that, today we have Chris, as you've heard, and we have a returning guest and in Arijit to discuss the second film of our 12 film, not 12 film, but 12 things, film, TV, collaboration, whatever of David Lynch, because there'll be multiple episodes on Twin Peaks. So I don't know how many episodes this whole project will be throughout this year, but we are doing the once per month. We will meet and talk about a Lynch film, we are watching everything he's made. It doesn't matter if we've seen it before, it doesn't matter if we've not seen it before. We are just, this is our year to, talk about him. It's not, I like I said last episode, doesn't matter. The passing stuff is an excuse for us, because if I had the opportunity, I would have done this 2-3 years back also, if I had found enough people and talked about stuff which if they wanted to talk about Lynch, I would not be saying no to anyone, because he's one of my favorites. So we've established this before. For people who haven't listened to our first episode, please go ahead and listen. I think it was pretty good. On Eraserhead, we were with Devarsi in that, and you can talk. Me, Chris, and Devarsi all talked about our introductions to Lynch in that episode, and then talked about the film itself and what it is to. We didn't decode it or anything. I think that's again been, I will recurring thing. I'll say it in every episode we record, where it's like we're not decoding Lynch's films. It's kind of antithetical to his films. Decoding sort of implies that you're gonna there is a code to be decoded, but it's far more malleable. So you can go. We'll be offering whatever we think about them, and then we can talk about other people's variations of it. This film which we are discussing today will probably be one of the most straightforward Lynch films. This is of course The Elephant Man. But before we start talking about the film itself and everything, Arijit, I'll like to ask you to firstly say hi, I guess, and then talk about your introduction to Lynch and how much you love him and how he inspired you to be what you are, I suppose, and so in one sense.
Thank you for inviting me back. That's kind from like a Spurs fan to a Chelsea fan,
Oh
especially
God.
after the season
You're
we
doing
have had.
football jokes again. Oh God. No.
So after that sort
As
of
depressing as Elephant Man. But anyways,
so yeah,
sorry. Yeah.
so we, I mean, yeah, that's really kind of you because we, I mean, after the thing we have defeated Spurs, and obviously Spurs have had a pretty decent season, I might say.
Oh, yeah. We
I mean,
don't talk about all that.
they're still Europa finalists, but no, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we keep talking about it, and
Yeah.
uh, I couldn't make it to the last episode, but anyway, Lynch is like one of my favorite filmmakers, and I think it was back 2017 or 18, somewhere around. I found this letterbox list where there was like some absurd surrealistic films. There were daisies and all these
Oh, is
things,
this
and
post like Twin Peaks, the return release? I'm guessing because it released
yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
17. I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
After that, and
Sure.
but I was not interested in Twin Peaks or anything, and
Sure.
I was not even aware, I think, much about Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
But then I came across his name, Eraserhead, and the poster was actually very interesting. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So I started watching it, and I mean, there are certain films, that sort of tells you, it changes a lot of things, a lot of perceptions, the
Yeah.
way you watch films. And to me, I was back then I was very used to like very linear narrative films
Mm.
with which are written in structure and all that. So this kind of a surrealist and very hauntingly, very creepy sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And that changed a lot of things, that changed a lot of perceptions. And I think I have mentioned that before as well, because like the whole soundscape of that film made me reconsider that. I mean, I was like brought into this whole new world where I got to know that sound can be designed this way,
Mm.
because I was so naive. I used to think that people used to record in camera, and that's just so. And which is one of the reasons of like the reason like why I pursued a career in sound. But apart from that, I mean, after that, obviously, I started watching Lynch films one after the other, and more than that, I think I started watching his like his interviews and all that stuff. And he's such a like he was such a like nice guy to listen to. He would always talk
Yeah.
with so much optimism and with so
This is
much
my time to
positivity.
insert a clip of him talking because
Yes,
it's essentially I'm going
absolutely.
to use every opportunity to have his voice be because he explains it really like he like I don't it's not a let me be very clear not a laughing at it's just a very like endearing way of speaking so
Right,
and he
right, right.
speaks a lot
Yeah.
of sense which is the other thing like
And he would speak
so
with that voice, this, I
yeah
have this nicotine and I have this deep love for coffee and like that.
yeah
It's really, and there's so much sense of positive energy. And he would always encourage
yeah
artists to be like that. I mean, he would
Mhm.
always say that, negativity is like, it cuts off your creativity. So always,
It's
and
just for your
then,
films you just
yeah.
have to splatter it all over your
And then I was like,
films.
this guy, he's so optimistic in real life. He's talking about bright sunshine and blue skies. And I mean,
But it's the
he's
whole, but that's the main dichotomy, right, of his films also.
right,
Like the
right,
bright,
right.
sunny exterior, and then what is
Absolutely.
lurking
Yeah,
underneath is
right,
like a
right.
cesspool of hell, essentially.
Totally, totally.
Yeah,
And I think that dichotomy sort of attracted me. I mean, that
sure.
was, yeah, that's the thing that was intriguing. And I think I've said this before. I mean, Dhruv,
Mhm.
you just have to go through is the, like
That's
the
fine.
my smoking issues. And I'm
Yes.
a person who, are we supposed to say this on record? I think we can, right?
You can say whatever you want.
This is
There's no
PG-13,
problem.
right?
No. It's fully, whatever,
Because in
X-rated, I guess.
because in our podcast we spoke from everything from smoking to cocaine, and
Oh yeah, I
right,
remember
we
where
were talking
someone
about,
expressed their wish to do cocaine because
and
filmmakers
inspired
get
from
inspiration from
Paul
it. Yeah.
Thomas Anderson. So yeah, so no, but yeah, I've always been a like very heavy smoker, and there was
Yeah.
a I genuinely enjoy smoking, and this is a very weird thing to say because I've always been told by friends, relatives, and everyone like, who cares, don't smoke and all that. Obviously for fair reasons,
Yeah.
and even I was very conflicted, deeply conflicted that I'm doing harm to my health. How can I
Mm.
enjoy something that is so harmful? And then during that lockdown, I come across that video where Lynch is talking about, I have this deep love for nicotine. I wake up and I smoke. There's nothing like having a nice smoke and looking out of the window. And I was like, that's it. There is this guy.
Found your justification. No,
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, I'm just saying. I think. I mean, I don't want to like push you under the table and say that Lynch has a different perspective, because I know that till a fairly recent time, cigarettes were considered healthy. So I can understand when the people were just like smoking them, like basically they drink Coke because he loves Coke also apparently. So not Coca-Cola. Sorry,
Right,
not.
no
I
coke.
don't know if he likes Coke at all. That other sort. Okay. So, anyways, I just wanted to clarify. Anyways, go ahead. You
No,
were
no,
saying.
that's sort of a personal relation, because for me, sometimes I know this is absurd, but I
Mm,
keep the people I admire, like whose works I admire, for example, like say Stephen King or someone like an artist or
mm,
painter, and this is a very weird thing, but I sneak into their personal lives and see what their
sure.
personal habits are,
Mm,
and I try to always like see, oh, acha, does this match with certain weird habits that I have? I think
mhm.
it's a very freaky thing, but it sort
Yeah.
of gives me validation.
No, no,
I
of
don't know
course.
why.
If people you admire do stuff which you also do, of course you'll get, you'll be like, oh, nice.
So yeah, so that's sort of I have a relation. But apart from all these things, I think the films of
Mhm.
David Lynch always makes me go down my memory lane, and also lets me unearth very uncomfortable or certain, if I may say, certain traumatic memories
Sure.
which I would otherwise maybe suppress, and it happens very instinctively. As I remember, even while I was watching Elephant Man,
Mm-hmm.
which we'll talk about. I mean, we used to have these freak shows back here as well, and when I was a child, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, in one of those, I was a kid and I was pointing to that. I was talking to my mother. I was like saying, look at that freak, look at that freak," and I was like, I was enjoying. It was funny for me at that point as a
Yeah, yeah,
kid,
of course. As a
funny to
kid,
me.
yeah.
But I mean, as I grew up, I mean, things change, and
Yeah.
I have always been guilty of that, and somehow I mean, I don't know, maybe my memory is warped of that, because from what I know, memory keeps changing,
Yeah.
but somehow I have never been able to get off that guilt. So every time I'll be
Mm-hmm.
watching Elephant Man, like yesterday I was watching it, and there was something ticked me off somewhere in the middle of the film, and I zoned out, and it triggered that memory impulses, those
Mm.
triggered, and I had to. And
Sure.
that sort of happened very without any effort. We
Mm-hmm.
just went into that memory lane, and I just somehow came out. So in that is something that I think David Lynch's films, even, I mean, we were talking about Blue Velvet earlier, and I mean,
Yeah.
there are instances of violence which I have seen myself.
Mm-hmm.
So when I watch Blue Velvet, I mean, that those things come up, I mean,
Yeah.
and then there will be just flashes or bursts of those moments, either orally or maybe visually. So I
Mm-hmm.
think in that way, I mean, David Lynch is an amazing filmmaker. I mean, what better way to do these things? I mean, you're making a film which is going right down to your subconscious or your
Yeah.
unconscious mind, and it's poking those things up. Now it's
Yeah.
for the good or bad, I don't know, but yeah,
No,
yeah.
no, I think for the, again, any film that can make anyone feel, think is, I think,
Yeah, but I feel
automatically.
I feel lighter. I feel better now.
Yeah.
After yesterday, I think, and I mean, I watched Different Man as well, but it didn't
Mm-hmm.
happen then. And then
I think
while I
in
was
different man. I mean, I know we have. I like the film, but I always thought there was a more intellectual remove with that. For
Yeah,
me.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But Lynch's films are, I think, in that sense, much more. How do we say it? Much more impulsive in a sense, much
Yeah.
more instinctive based. So
Yeah.
it's easier to get into your cerebral self and unearth or you know
Yeah.
um, excavate those things. And
Yeah.
now I feel much better in a way. I
Hmm.
mean, now I've come to terms with the thing that I can't like go and undo that thing
Of
from my
course.
childhood unless I have a time machine, which I don't,
Yes.
obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes me feel better. So yeah, maybe that's that way it's
No, that's
good.
a great way
I don't
to. I
know.
mean, yeah, I'm trying to think. I think what you were saying, I've had with other, like maybe I've not had it with Lynch mostly. What the experience you're saying, I had it maybe with some other filmmakers, but with Lynch, I think for me it might just be. I know we've talked about it a little bit, so I'm just gonna like blabber a bit, not too much. I think it's just transporting you to a different, like, to me this is the sort of Americana, or like the view of Americana which I can gel with, almost in the sense that I can at least enjoy its absurdities and enjoy,
Right.
and then see it also for how rotten it is actually most of the time. But because I've never felt of a piece with a lot of American culture. Like I've not, like for example, Richard Linklater's cinema just doesn't personally appeal to me. By that, I don't mean that he's a bad filmmaker. By that, I simply mean that he's actually, I would say the opposite. He's a good enough filmmaker to make me somewhat care about people who I usually wouldn't care about. So you know,
Mhm.
it's one of those things where I've fundamentally been opposed to something like nostalgia also and everything. So you know, he plays
Right.
into those aspects where all these elements are present, but then there's the romanticization always has a counterbalance to it also. Like it's almost like, you know, you have the dark and the light, which is, I'll read out this quote again every episode. This is the other thing which will be read out because it's wonderfully written by Christine McKenna, I think,
Mhm.
in Room to Dream, which is just again, I know we mentioned in the last episode, but it's just a perfect summation of his filmography. So, quote: "We live in a realm of opposites, a place where good and evil, spirit and matter, faith and reason, innocent love and carnal lust exist side by side in an uneasy truce. Lynch's work resides in the complicated zone where the beautiful and the damned collide." I mean, we could not do any other episode and you can just take away this from that, but I think it's so wonderfully put in the sense that you know exactly this tension is there throughout his work. So I think it plays on a very human level as opposed to even Americana level. I suppose that's why I really click with it. So to me, it's not actually a sort of, you know, a personal reckoning. I don't think I've ever like outright related to a Lynch. I'm trying to think, but maybe
No, I
not.
think that's difficult. I mean, and that's
Yeah,
not the point, I guess, even
yeah,
like
yeah.
to personally, but I think what it does is it taps into these, below the surface, these emotions or these
Yeah.
memories, and also very weird stuff. Like, I remember once seeing a man is sort of like a rag picker, not even rag picker, I mean, sort of a
Hmm.
vagabond type of man, but
Hmm.
he was bit by these bees from a hive. I mean,
Okay.
he was trying to
Hmm.
burn the hive or something, and I mean, you can imagine how grotesque or
Hmm.
that person would be looking, and he was in a lot of pain, and
Hmm.
that sort of haunting visual.
Hmm.
And obviously I would be, I mean, my memory would be trying to suppress it because I would never want to go there. And
Yeah.
anytime or every time I would be watching Eraserhead,
Hmm.
that night I'll be dreaming that man, and he'll be somewhere around, and it's like not just him, I'll be having those marks on my body,
Yeah.
and somehow I'm not in pain, but somehow I'm like having all those blotches and marks, and I'd be
It's
very
a
ugly when it's the worst.
sensation, no? Almost like it's
Right,
the
right.
yeah. And I think this might go bleed into a little bit. And I know this film particularly isn't surrealist. It has surrealist sequences, but it's not surrealist. But I think in general, Lynch's surrealism, because his surrealism is much more. How do I say it? Loud, over dramatic, operatic than your traditional surrealists, even. And this is not a dig, this is just a note. Because there are other reference points we can make with Louis Buñuel or even Apichat Pong, I would say, who sort of operate in a zone where it's much smoother the way people, you know, and the melodrama's toned down, I suppose. But I think Lynch's work, because it's so almost like, you know, yin and yang between like abrasive and like really romantic almost sometimes. So it's so like these extremes of emotions both sort of consistently push you through the narrative. So it's the whole narrative is oblique, but like, you know, the emotions, then if the narrative is oblique, then something else has to drive a film, right? And that's emotion, which I think is wonderful. Like again, that's the way I connect with a lot of films. Like I think the more and more I've sort of watched and like read stuff, I've just been more and more enamored by how truth in many ways or feeling also is not expressed linearly, narratively, you know, like those are such strange emotions that you have to, the way to evoke them is not like some state like realism, but it's more like a sort of like edging off of that realism almost. It's like you need some of that hyper emotion almost to get at the truth of something. So yeah, something
Well,
like that.
it's that ability to hit the intellect second, right? Like a
Yeah.
lot of time you watch films and you feel that they're trying to hit that intellectual part of you first, get you to understand it, and then you can process the emotions.
Yeah.
But what works beautifully with Lynch is it's all emotions first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The
yeah,
intellect can come later, and almost
absolutely.
because is constantly tricking you, or not tricking you, but in the sense he's confusing you so much, you're actively discouraged from allowing yourself to intellectualize it
Mm.
before you can feel it,
Yeah.
and that's what
And
really clicks.
no,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And I'll just add one more note to that, simply because I think you can take this point, whatever Chris made, and apply it to another filmmaker and then call them shoddy just because
Hmm.
uh, there's an impatience to their filmmaking. Like it's the like throwing everything against the wall sort of thing. If you see Lynch's films, he takes the utmost amount of time and patience. Actually, he's
Mhm.
really patient with his setups, like camera setups, and even just like basic. Because in Elephant Man, you get to see him do a lot of basic filmmaking, great basic
Hmm.
filmmaking,
Right.
not
Right.
flashy, the sort of surrealist sort of. There are bits and pieces of that, but there's like some really, really good, like basic shot setups, which sort
Hmm.
of tell you a lot about what is going on with the characters rather than sort of, being. So he's like, again, it's another demonstration, if anything else, Elephant Man, of how much he can actually make a normal film. I still wish he doesn't, but but he can. Like, at least from a directorial standpoint, a lot of Elephant Man, I think, is like really great. So, anyways, any other points on Lynch before we go into the Elephant Man, guys? Please go ahead. No, no, no. I get two no's, so we will go to the Elephant Man. Chris, you have been quiet, so I will ask you to start. And I know you've done
Okay.
research
Yeah, I did research.
because I told you to, but
So
it's just because
you
I was
did.
lazy. Basic credits I
Yeah,
have
so
written if you want though. So if you so
go
it's
go ahead.
directors David Lynch, writer is two guys in David Lynch. The two guys are Christopher DeVore and Eric Berggren.
Hmm.
The DOP is Freddie Francis, editor Anne V. Coates, composer John Morris. Cast is Anthony Hopkins before he was Sir, so just Anthony Hopkins.
Hmm.
John Hurt, Anne Bancroft, Wendy
Yeah.
Hiller, Freddie Jones, and many, many more. Because it's a fairly people-heavy film. It's a complete contrast to
To
Eraserhead, actually.
Eraserhead.
Because I had like
Yeah.
three notes for credits there. But yeah.
Yeah, it's also executive produced by Mel Brooks,
Oh yes,
also
he's a
produced by
big thing
Brooks
actually in
Films.
this. I was about to say.
Yes, Anne Bancroft being his wife, who's
Hmm.
also in the film.
Yeah.
And yeah, the story behind it is that one of the writers' girlfriend was the babysitter for the producer and producer's child, and she handed the script over to him, which is what got him to get it to Mel Brooks, and he himself recommended Lynch. Or was it someone's
No, I think
assistant
someone else
recommended? Yeah,
recommended
yeah.
Lynch to
No, I
him. Yeah,
think
yeah,
Brooks's assistant to someone recommended
yeah, yeah,
Lynch
yeah.
to
But
do
they
the
had seen
film.
Eraserhead, and then I think after that, he
Yeah.
was planning to make another film, but that couldn't get made. The screenplay, Ronnie, what was it called?
Ronnie
Ronnie
Rocket.
Rocket. I always think of
Yes.
Red Rocket then for some
Yes. Same.
very.
Yeah.
No,
So
no other
coming
mention of
to
Sean Baker shall be made. Sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
yeah,
Finish.
coming to Elephant Man. Honestly, I really don't know how I want to talk about it just because I'm so conflicted about it as a
Sure.
film. Like Dhruv and I were talking before this that when we were discussing it elsewhere, I was much more critical of the film than Dhruv was, but I've rated it more on Letterboxd than he
Yeah.
has. So it's a sort of interesting dilemma for me because, like you said, it's excellent basic filmmaking. Like there is that is
And
one thing that
some
is
sorry. There's a fair
some
bit of
surreal
surrealist. Yeah,
and surrealist stuff also is quite good. Like I have
yeah, yeah. No,
no
no, it's not
that
random garbage thrown at the screen just for the sake of it. Yeah.
and it's like perfectly well balanced throughout the
Hmm.
film. But I think for me the reason why I'm so convicted about it is I think there is a fundamental trouble to the film, which is I think it's very misguided in what it's trying to do. And I
Sure.
think the moment that it hit me really is actually very fun. I was scrolling through Letterboxd a little bit, looking at how people were talking about the film,
Fairly
and
highly
I
rated
s-
there.
yeah, very highly rated there. And I saw the way that people were talking about it, and a certain discomfort started brewing in me
Okay.
because about in the film there's a scene
Yeah,
where
can
Anthony
we first
Hopkins
tell
sort
them
of
what, for anyone who isn't aware, what the film is about? I have the plot. Do you have it?
no, I
Then
don't. You can go
okay,
ahead.
you have it. Oh no, sorry, I have it then. Okay, no,
Go.
I don't have any fun names for this film, and like Eraserhead, I just
You
have the
shouldn't.
IMDb plot. Yeah, I don't think so. It would feel inappropriate. But
Yeah.
a Victorian surgeon rescues a heavily disfigured man who is mistreated while scraping a living as a sideshow freak. Behind his monstrous facade, there is revealed a person of kindness, intelligence, and sophistication. Pretty apt, I suppose, in
So,
terms of plot description, not in how the
yeah,
film ends.
and again, it's maybe it being Lynch's most direct film is one of its big issues.
This
Fundamentally,
and
so what my
apparently the straight story, which I have not seen also. So
So, my point being, so there's about halfway through the film, there is a sort of reckoning that happens with Anthony Hopkins' characters, who's essentially discussing where how he has does is there a parallel between how he has treated this character John Merrick as he was treated
he
before
doesn't discuss
he
it, he
came into
says it.
his.
That's what it is. Just
He sort
says
of
it.
like very like point like stares down at the camera and just like spells it out. But the thing is, it's a very important thing to acknowledge, and it's something that is being acknowledged through the film. But then the second half proceeds to just do that. And
Hmm.
what I mean by that is, I my research being in queer studies, there's a heavy overlap between queer studies and disability studies, and one of the things that is always talked about there is how does one talk about the experience of discrimination or of
Yeah.
being mistreated, and what impact that has on the person who has suffered.
Mhm.
Because there is this idea that in a lot of films where they're portrayed as these pitiable victims, and the moral complexity is allowed for every character who is not that person, but no attempt is made to actually deal with what bitterness or what turmoil or what inconsistencies that could come through by being mistreated like that. What anger does one experience in that scenario. So the film, in the first half, as Dhruv will point out, I think pretty well, is that it does a very interesting thing by distancing us from the character and making very clear that we cannot see the world from his perspective. But then in the latter half, sort of makes us follow him, which then puts us back into this dilemma where he becomes this really flat character. So the point being that it's complicit. I feel like the film is unable to deal with its own complicity in what it's doing, but I still like it because it's a damn well made film. So like that's
So
my sort of
that's
thoughts.
that's Chris's pitch to the next to the publisher essentially, or what he's going to write about. No, I'm kidding. It was very good. If I were a publisher, I would publish it, Chris. But I'm not, so it's fine. Arijit, yeah, go
Proof,
ahead.
if
What?
you were a publisher, then I am still standing in the queue.
All of you will. हाँ मैं publisher
Get
होता
in
तो
line,
सभी है.
sir.
I have lots of people, right? Yeah. Yeah. I think I'll follow the disciple trajectory someday. Don't worry.
No,
Anyway.
I mean, no, Chris actually made very interesting points. I'm still processing it,
Mhm.
but one of the things that I mean, it also struck me yesterday when I was watching it was the character of Doctor. I mean, the Anthony Hopkins character,
Frederick Treves, I think.
Travis, yeah,
Treves.
Yeah.
Treves, yeah,
Treves,
right,
Treves, whatever. Sorry.
right, right,
Sir Anthony Hopkins, I think we'll just call him that.
right,
Yeah.
and his intentions, because I felt there's a sense of superiority while he was like his approach to the treatment. There was a sense of superiority, and there was a sense of duality, in the sense that, is it altruism, is
Hmm.
it exploitation, and there's a thin line between that, and
Yep.
I think, and that works both in terms of I mean, personal context, or maybe you take into consider it into a very larger social context.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that and even I was conflicted at some point, because I mean, what was his role? Was it truly like, I mean, intending to help Merrick? Was there compassion, or
Can
was it?
I, sorry, Arjit, can I make
Yeah.
not a segue, but this is a real life sort of,
Yes, yes. Please go
almost
ahead.
like it's sort of
Please go ahead.
extension to
Yeah.
this because I actually had a discussion about this with so many people before, and sort of kind of dovetails. It's a lot of it, it's sort of a sort of patronage. You know how their wealthy patrons sort of support the artist. So or like whatever. That's one angle. I was also thinking about his character in relation to, for example, and I can give you a personal example because I was told to do this at one point in school, we had to do service essentially as part of our curriculum to, to pass our school essentially. And if we didn't complete it, we would fail it. And of course, when you do all this, it adds to your resume and everything and everything and everything. So the big dilemma then becomes, in some ways, if a rich person, this is what someone asked me once. I was like, if a rich person donates, for example, 1.5 whatever currency, whatever thing, to an organization which helps them, but at the same time also ups their resume, or does whatever, like it also is self-serving in a very obvious way. Then someone had raised this question: does it matter to the person who's being helped if what the intention of the rich person is? And I was like, no, it doesn't. But then there is I think it matters on a more ideological and fundamental, the way you view the world level. Almost, it's like it's non-monetary. The how it matters, it's non-monetary, it's more philosophical, it's more existential, which is what I think links very well to what Arijit was talking about, Anthony Hopkins' dilemma in the film, which is like dilemma acknowledged in the film, is that that what is the purpose of me helping this person? My compassion, what is it? Is it not self-serving in some ways, which is as bad as the abuse done towards sort of John Merrick by his previous employer? So I think that sort of, it, what you were saying, Arijit, sort of brought my mind back to like one of those discussions I had. And I think it is a worldview thing more than a sort of course he helps him, it doesn't. So from the perspective of the victim, it won't matter that much if that help actually improves his life, and it does in the film. But I think for a large portion of the first half of the film is very attuned to not John Merrick's perspective, which makes all these questions sort of come up in the film a lot. And it's almost like the film is gonna be throughout its runtime an interrogation of that sort of contradictory compassion. That am I really compassionate, or am I just doing this to get ahead in my job and to get popular, essentially, like something like that. Sorry, Arijit. I just wanted to
No, no,
plug
no.
that.
It was actually very nice.
Yeah.
You pretty much actually summed up. No,
Sorry.
but no. But the question, I have a question. That the thing that you did in school, was that community service sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a thing. There was a program called CAS, which is I can't
Yeah.
remember the
Because
full
we
form of
had
the name.
something very similar, that we had to do some community service to gain some points and
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
We used to grades on that. And I see that is the thing. I mean, we were kids, right?
yeah,
So for us, it was about getting grades. And obviously,
yeah,
we didn't have that sort of, we hadn't built that sort of compassion or understanding of social context or anything. But I think also a lot of class struggle comes into play in this one, because
yeah.
there's a sense of power dynamics. Because if we speak about patronage, I mean, MF Hussain had patron. I
Mm-hmm,
mean, most painters or artists, I mean, there was a documentary also, I forgot the name.
mm-hmm.
I mean, patrons usually, they want to cleanse their blood money, and that's the only
Yeah,
way to
mm,
do it, right?
yeah,
So that sort of power dynamics, I mean, I was not very strongly conflicted. I don't have a strong
mm,
opinion about it, but somehow it struck to me, this whole Travis's intentions.
mm,
And obviously it's helping the elephant man, but on the other way, I mean, if you are like placed above, if you're the man
yeah.
with power and control, then how do you use it? I mean, there's again a very ethical question. So aspect struck with me, and I'm not sure how to answer that. But yeah, I think you answered it better. I mean, you
No, but
some.
Arijit, I think it's to do with the whole idea of. I don't think the film. I mean, I think the shortcoming of the film is that it doesn't explore it. I think it acknowledges it, but it doesn't explore it. Is my
No, but I
shortcoming. Sorry, yeah, go
also
ahead.
think there's a conflation happening here, even with what you're saying, Dhruv,
Okay.
is and again, so apologies for my philosophy student
No, no.
nonsense,
Yes,
but
please go
um,
ahead. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Correct.
no, but it's fundamentally about how you construct a moral framework, right?
Sure.
Is it intention or is it outcome? And I think these two things are being
Sure.
conflated. is moral value assigned when based on the intention of the outcome of the action or the outcome of the action? I think Anthony Hopkins' moral dilemma is interesting not because of why he's doing it, but what he is doing,
Sure.
particularly characterized by that scene where John Merrick's character is with these two rich people who came for their own interest, and the nurse in the hospital stops him and tells him that you're doing a wrong thing by allowing this. It's about the act itself of
Tension.
displaying him the same way that Bites was displaying him, only to an upper crowd. The
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the
intention is
nurse
not what
actually
is
says that, right? She's doing the same thing now.
exactly, but
Yeah.
that's about outcome. It's not
Sure.
really about the intention, because you can have terrible intentions but still do have positive outcomes.
Yeah.
So is your question that there is something fundamentally morally wrong if, regardless of outcome, if your intention is impure? But then how do you have altruism? Like, can we
Yeah.
then you get come really fundamental existential questions? Can you have pure altruism?
वो
Can
सब
anyone
no,
think
no,
outside
you're
of
right. No, what you're saying is
self-interest and
right.
all of that?
I did confuse intention and outcome there. So yes, yeah,
So I think the film does that as well. I think that, again,
sure.
that is my fundamental
Okay,
problem, because Anthony Hopkins' dilemma should be about the outcome. It becomes about his intention.
sure.
So that is where he gets the moral superiority by the end, because his intentions have improved, but have his outcomes improved? Because
I mean,
again,
in the
still,
film's context, yes, but in the, I don't know, like, it is one of those things where, anyways, this is the sort of moral fabric of the film, and we will, of course, talk about all that because it's the, I think, the very interesting, because again, I guess I'll do the dumbing down of what good things Chris has said here and talk about basically the idea that the reason I didn't watch The Elephant Man, I think now for the longest time, is because it was nominated for 8 Academy Awards. I thought David Lynch made a film which the Academy likes, which means it's probably going to be the worst thing ever, which it's 100% not. But no, no, no. I'm kidding. But I think the big thing was that I'm very, and I think Chris and me both have expressed this. I don't know, Arijit, what do you think of it? But my personal stance is I've always reacted much more to films which obliquely look at tragedies or biographies or whatever. The tried and tested biopic, direct, and sort of, I would even say, like, I know blasphemous thing, people will, I know it's a very
Those are
famous.
mostly hagiographies, but
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, hagiographies and everything. So no, but I was even thinking like I'm fine with the. So one of the great things about Elephant Man, I think the first half especially, was I was really surprised by the perspective the film took, and for at least 1 hour of the 2 hour film, I was genuinely like rooting for it to just keep on going the way it's going, because I was like, you are doing something so interesting with a film which I thought will essentially begin with him being exploited by one person, then going and getting exploited by the other person in a very rudimentary sort of, look how the world is mean to a innocent othered character like that. But the film doesn't do that. I think one of the interesting things about the film is, and I think I mentioned this to Chris, it doesn't begin with showing his exploitation at the circus, which I thought itself is like fascinating. I'm like, where is that opening shot of him getting like, totally beaten up by this owner? We don't get it. We just don't. We are at the point where he's essentially Bites is the person who's the his wrangler in some senses, quote unquote. He's almost getting told off and almost like you can't do this to this person and everything, and then Anthony Hopkins comes in and notices him, and which I think is one of the finest shots of the film. But yeah, the fact that we don't open there and then we have this 30 to 40 minute section just at this hospital, and for the longest part of that 30-40 minute we don't even see John Merrick like in profile fully, like it's always like in a slanted sort of way, either within the shadows. It's not like, oh, look at this like freak no, everything is mediated through these people who we are introduced to. Anthony Hopkins, of course, he's the quote unquote savior of Merrick. We are mediated and seeing him through Bites. We are mediated and seeing him through the doctors there. Everything is a mediated perspective. And for the longest time, the film just sticks to its guns with that. I was just like astonished. I was like, wow, you've taken like, and I was astonished that the Academy acknowledged this. That, but then I saw the second half. But anyways, the first half,
That's a bigger surprise, actually. Sorry to,
yeah,
yeah, Academy acknowledging it is a much bigger surprise
yeah.
than.
Exactly. So, but no, but the first half was going on, and I was just like, and my favorite scene in the film and the favorite sort of sequence, it almost, and parts of the film reminded me of Kubrick for a weird reason, of like a Paths of Glory sort of almost bureaucratic, and a Clockwork Orange, except less colorful, sort of really cold, clinical, precise, really. Uncomfortable and like really like it makes you jitter a little bit, like it's like every scene has the tension. Like there's this particular shot, like a wide shot, in which Anthony Hopkins is essentially showing him off as a subject in front of a crowd of people. And the way Lynch shoots it, he begins by zooming into a camera, framing all this, and then like a cameraman framing all this, and then he like shows like a wide angle shot of, and you just see him talking, and the shadow of this elephant man behind. It's almost like an x-ray of a person. You don't even see the person. And then repeatedly in that sequence, he goes into this zone of focusing on the doctors' faces and how all of them are reacting. And I was like, this is so good. I did not expect a person like a mainstream Hollywood film in which so much of the thing is being that, you as the viewer are actually aligned with people who think they are saviors, and are making a big deal by actually paying attention to him, but are actually in their actions doing something extremely condescending and not seeing him as anything other than a creature. So, all that stuff I think is wonderful. I think we talked about the close up, the dolly in on Anthony Hopkins' face when he first discovers him. We don't see him, Anthony Hopkins sees him. And there's a tear that drops from his face, and you don't know if what the tear is for. Is it an excitement of finding a creature, or is it, a genuine concern for someone? All that stuff is so good. And then I don't want to say anything, because there's this really great sequence even with his wife at his house, I think, with Anthony Hopkins's wife, because when Merrick goes there, even in those sequences which are more overtly that his wife is portrayed as someone who's very helpful and like a good soul. But there's this, I remember before cutting away, you have this close up shot, and she just looks away almost in disgust. For that, I'm like, there's such a great moment of, it just puts like a spanner in the works, even for the nicest characters. It feels like there's something they're hiding always. Like it's always this feeling of superiority to him. And we are positioned in that same way. We are not let off the hook in some ways. So for the longest time, but then Hollywood happens, and I don't mean it in a Hollywood is bad, but like it's the really it just the film just loses its conviction for me, and it just sort of is like we've explored whatever we can, and now we have to do the beat by beat. Where did this guy go, and how did he get exploited? And I
Now
just found it
structure
tiresome.
takes precedence.
Yeah, and I'm just like,
Forget emotion, structure.
yeah, which is it's a
This is
great
this is
great
what you're going to
point.
get. This is what you're going to get from studio execs now. If you ever enter into a writer's room, they're going to talk about you in the pilot. It's all going to be about emotion and all that. Then they're going to be, oh, it's about structure and character arcs and all that stuff. That will take precedence, and it's so
But yeah,
annoying. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
no,
No,
go
no,
ahead, go ahead.
no, you go ahead. I just had to say this, but
No,
I
no,
mean,
no. I think that's fair. I mean, I also think there's just the film forgets about Anthony Hopkins for a while. Am I not wrong? I thought he was the center in a really effective way, because he was mediating, and I think his performance is great in this, because he's really having to convey a sort of slightly sinister edge to his character, like in a very reserved tone, and he's really good at it. But there's a point where he goes and then he just pops up and says this thing, what Chris is saying about, like his moral dilemma out loud to the camera. And I'm like, but I got that. I don't need just an extra scene of you saying it out loud. And then the film never does anything with it much at all. We just move on to, and I even the stuff with the actress I think is very underexplored. I thought there
Yeah.
was a really fascinating conflict in the beginning where it felt like she was almost willing to go towards him to gain more popularity, almost like a,
Popularity.
which again never gets, like it just sort of fritters away, and like it becomes very episodic, and it becomes very conventional in a way which I found bothersome. And I think it doubles down on what Chris's problems are with the film then, and which is why it
Yeah.
sort of, the goodness of the first half sort of starts to ebb away, which is my sort of big
Yeah,
thing.
and it's the I was telling you when it's a funny comparison for me to make, but like for I feel like a way that this at least the second half problem is dealt with much more interestingly is the famous Gaston Leroux novel slash Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, not the Joel Schumacher film. Please do not watch it.
Which one?
Called Phantom of the
Oh,
Opera.
okay, okay.
Do not watch the Joel Schumacher film. I say that
Is that
again.
one with, is
Joel
that the one with
Schumacher has
Gerard
a
Butler?
Phantom of the
Yeah,
Opera. Wow.
yeah, the one with Gerard Butler. It is
My
so
God.
bad.
This is a revelation. I'm definitely going to watch it then. because I
Enjoy.
because I love the original one, but I can't imagine Joel Schumacher doing.
I love the stage musical. I'm a huge Andrew Lloyd
Oh,
Webber
okay.
fan, but so in the story itself, Eric, our phantom, is a man with a disfigured face,
Right.
and his backstory is that he was in a freak show and so on and so forth. But it all sorts of makes him so like angry and makes him feel like the world is against him that he ends up haunting this opera house. And throughout the process of the story, he murders a bunch of people and he's threatening the people who own the opera and so on and so forth. But he falls in love with this girl who's an ingenue, the young ingenue at the opera house. And the entire like the story is about how she discovers that he's disfigured even though he tries to stop her, but she doesn't. And then again, everybody turns against him and thinks of him
Mhm.
as this monster. But the climax of the story is essentially that he's captured her lover
Mhm.
and saying that if you don't marry me, I will kill this guy.
Mhm.
And she says, okay, I will marry you. And he's like, this is not real. She's probably going to kill herself after she does so. But in that moment, she kisses him,
Mhm.
and he feels it's essentially the dialogue that John Merrick says to
Mhm.
Treves' wife, which is, I've never been treated so well by a beautiful woman.
Mhm.
But you've seen this man who's done these evil things, but in that moment where he experiences true compassion, he's able to understand or finally see himself, like what Merrick says, I have gotten myself, or something, that I've received myself, or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
he
yeah.
says. And that it's that moment is all that is required, and then he lets both of them go and blesses them and so on and so
There's a
forth. So
lot of
there.
fade to blacks in this film for some reason.
Yeah.
There are a lot of them. Like it. I'm surprised. I don't know.
Yeah, so essentially that is a story, though it's a proper melodramatic rock opera from the 80s, so similar era, but so it's the emotions are another level, but it's able to, you know, address that complexity of, what happens when these things happen to you. But even in the second half of the film, after John Merrick is mistreated, he's not fair, he's about to die, he's put into a cage, which I'm
Cage.
like, Lynch, little
There's a
bit,
lot of
this is a bit.
very very thudding symbolism also with the
It's
with the
it's a
church
bit
building,
much.
with the
Yeah.
cathedral, whatever, like, and then it's
Uh,
falling down when he's
Model.
doing bad, and then when it's making
That
good.
was also a
And
commentary on the Victorian England, right? No, sorry, I'm
Yeah.
just yeah.
no, it is, but I think it's a bit too on the nose from what I'm expecting. Or
Yeah, yeah,
it,
yeah.
it, it's
Absolutely
it,
right.
it's
Right.
it's almost to the point of being comical in an unintentional way. Like otherwise, it can be done very purposefully.
Poetically
But
also.
it Yeah, but it comes off
I
as
think
like,
the
okay, like beating you over the head with the
initial bit of
symbolism a little
him
bit.
trying to complete something which he cannot see and making it more perfect, I think is quite moving in the sense
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
he can't see the entirety of that building, and so he can add his, because I'm guessing because he is imperfect, like very it's the opposite Svala thing which always sort of comes into play, but because he is supremely imperfect, he wishes to make something which is so perfect, right? It's his own way of dealing with it. I think the one time when it happens is fine. I genuinely think the film forgets where to go
Hmm.
after a point, and then it's like grappling at a lot of things to do. But that's my opinion. I know it's loved by a lot of people.
No, but
Uh,
does that have to do anything with the adaptation? I think it's adapted from a book, right? I mean,
a
I don't.
little bit, but I think so. This
Yeah.
is written by the two guys I said, but then I think it was
This is the only
streamlined a
thing.
lot by David Lynch
Yeah.
and Mel
Also,
Brooks.
I think the only film not to have been written by Lynch himself. I think this may be
Yeah,
the.
and I
Straight
think also
story.
thing is No, it's also adapted from Treeves's memoir, I think. So
Sure.
there's
Ah,
also a perspective problem there because then you're
Okay.
adopting a very specific perspective, and
Which
that
again,
becomes
I
how you
think they do fascinating
emotionally.
stuff with the beginning, but then then it sort of it doesn't like go into it entirely. I mean, I was making the comparison with Claire Denis a little bit till the first
Mm,
half, where I was like, I was loving it because I was just like, it's never, it's the line you cannot cross essentially.
yeah.
It's like what you know. It's the I just rewatched Janet Planet, which I loved. So it's very much
Mm,
about truth, sort of coming to you once you accept that you actually don't know, as opposed
yeah.
to realizing and knowing something and being all-encompassing knowledge and everything. So yeah, I really like that idea in general, and
Mm,
I think the film applies it so wonderfully until it doesn't, which I think is my disappointment. But there's other things we can talk about. There's sequences which are amazing. The opening sequence, I was like, did I drop into like a Maya Deren film or like Maya Deren short film of like surrealism? Like, where is the what? Have I put the correct movie on? I know there's elephants in it, but like I was
mm,
just not expecting it to be that upfront with its surrealism in the
mm.
opening thing, and I was like, wow, Lynch really did not hold back.
Yeah, and
So
even the closing or the
it's
theater
pure.
portion of it, I what I love about it is that sort of what we were talking about is certain condensation to viscerality or like visceral emotionality, where you get his face and everything is sort of put on top of it, and so you see his
Like a
experience as
superimposition of everything, right?
superimpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so all you get is that absolutely abstracted and like a condensed moment of emotion throughout that entire
Yeah.
sequence. And I think that is such a beautiful way to communicate it without having to either sit through it or like cut it out altogether. You're able to get all of that like literally layered on top of each other in one go. So it's very
Yeah.
fascinating there.
Yeah. I mean, Arijit, what thoughts, what bits you like? I think you liked it the most out of us. So I'm sorry we've like pooped the party
no,
a little bit on
no,
this.
no, no. I like. I know. Obviously I like it more than you guys.
I mean, I like it. The whole thing
Yeah,
is
same.
it's one of those things, right? When you walk out of a film, sometimes you remember like it's the
Right,
first
right,
half.
right,
If the first half is worse than the second half, you'll
right,
probably
right.
think of a film more. Like if like the
Hmm.
last image is the thing that sort of sometimes uh, gets your. I remember watching a couple of movies in which I had issues with throughout, and then the last image happened, and I was like, Jesus Christ, I should watch the whole movie again. It's one of those things. But yeah,
Right, right, right. No, I
but
think
yeah.
I think it also has to do with my bias. I mean, I'm biased
Hmm?
towards David Lynch's works. Maybe
Hmm.
that. But one of the other things that's interesting to me is this
Hmm.
whole sense of othering. I mean, the way
Hmm.
the Elephant Man is othered,
Hmm.
his social alienation. He's physically deformed, but it's not
Hmm.
like he's not a. He's an intelligent person. He's someone who's also emotionally sensitive,
Yeah.
but there is, I think, there's also sense of belonging working towards that character. He wants to belong to some place,
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
and that isolation. I mean, they're showing Victorian England, but I mean, you could take it anywhere.
Yeah.
So I mean, I have always wondered because it's not just with. I mean, like I said previously, Lynch's films usually triggers memories, and it's not
Mm.
just sort of like straight physical deformities or anything like that. But when I was in school, I mean, we had we had students who were obese or like
Mhm.
excessively
Hmm.
obese for a kid at
Mhm.
that age, and they would usually be bullied.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And while I was never actively part of that, but
Mhm.
I was always a passive, spectator sort of
Oh
thing.
God, you
And
have that
Loki,
guilt also.
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
so, that is literally half my life, I feel. But
And and
anyway.
I sort of Loki enjoyed that bullying too. I mean,
Okay,
that's
that I don't think I can
yeah.
say,
I mean,
but
that's a
yeah.
very weird thing.
Yeah.
And
No,
I
no, but
think
it feel because it makes you feel somewhat superior, somewhat
exactly,
belonging to something. Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly. And
Mm.
also, I mean, if I mean, see, someone is bullying someone else, and now I could like step in and
Mhm.
I could tell this person that it's okay. I mean, I'm with you. The world is
Yeah.
not ending here. But at
Mm.
that point of time, I didn't do it either.
Yeah, yeah.
None of us did because
Yeah.
that sense of othering, that sense of alienation was also within us.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
I'm not obviously I'm just guilt tripping here because I was just a kid.
No,
But
no, no. It's
I
fine.
mean, it
I have
works
the same
for
guilt. I can relate.
adults as well. I think. I mean, if we see
Oh,
someone
adults is worse.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I mean, I that way, there's a sense of compassion to the film. I
Oh,
mean,
definitely. Oh,
right,
100%. There's absolutely no, I mean, even
for a
100% Chris and me are
film
not saying that there's no
that
compassion in the
deals
film.
with this kind of a
Yeah.
subject and a character, and
Mm.
for a film whose treatment is more or less very absurd, surrealist,
Mm.
not usual Lynchian thing,
Yeah.
but it's also very, yeah, it also has that hardcore Hollywood-esque
It
structural
has that, but then
side
it
to it.
also has. I mean, it. I know it's set in Victorian England now. It feels
Mhm.
like it's taking place next door to Eraserhead sometimes, to be very honest.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
those I think those visual elements are also very
Yeah.
it's almost like a sequel is
Huh, I was so I had
in that way,
made this note. I
right?
don't know how accurate this is because I just saw it today. But I don't know. Maybe whenever I rewatch the first half, because I will, I made this note saying that this is essentially his quote unquote light side to Eraserhead's dark side, in the sense, not in the sense of
Yeah, yeah,
lightness in
might
treatment, but
be.
in terms of the nighttime stuff in this is also fairly lit up brightly compared to Eraserhead. Eraserhead, there's literally sequences where you can't see much,
Yeah, yeah,
and I think that plays really well into the film's benefit. So yeah, I had written that it emphasizes the light a lot more and how basically cruelty sort of takes place even within that lightness
right,
space, which I think
right,
he's
right.
going for the light and darker contrast always, right? So I think this sort of plays into that, but from the other angle of Eraserhead in some ways. But
And
yeah,
also, in many ways, there are many explanations as to like if Eraserhead is sort of Lynch's projections of his fear as becoming a father,
mm,
Mm.
and like Henry Spence had this very disfigured kid, and he didn't know what to do with it,
yeah,
and
Mm.
so in a way, Elephant Man is might be the film where the
mm,
kid has grown up
mm,
and now he's on his own.
yeah,
So that's, I think
yeah,
that fear also creeps in
yeah.
some I mean somehow it creeps into the film, and I think that makes sense. But
Yeah. No, I mean, I
yeah,
think atmospherically it remains incredible. Like, I mean, that we've talked about the narrative a lot, but like, it's a David Lynch film. I'm like, I read that in one of the notes, they were like, what they cut out of the movie was a lot of people walking. Or like, there were a lot of shots of, so this is the quote. Quote, there were lots of shots of people walking down long hallways and atmosphere stuff that ended up being cut. And I'm like, why?
why
That's the
exactly?
stuff.
Why?
That
Yeah,
is the
right, why?
David Lynch
Yeah.
stuff I love. But
Why? But I think this is more like a very typical studio-backed film, because I think the
yeah,
guy
Mm.
who recommended to Jonathan Sanger, I think Mel Brooks did, or someone
Mel
else.
Brooks. Mel Brooks is hugely
Mel
involved in
Brooks.
it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But he was uncredited, I think, because
yeah.
he
His
didn't want the
production
audience
company is
to.
his, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he didn't
so
want the
Yeah.
audience to have a preconceived notion that it's a
sure.
comedy film
Yeah,
usually.
Okay.
But I
yeah,
think whoever recommended it was also like had also seen Eraserhead, and that's the reason I
yeah.
think
Mm.
thought the treatment wise this could be very
Yeah,
similar.
because this is I've seen some films on set in Victorian era. None of them look like dump yard like Pennsylvania in Eraserhead. But I mean, I love that dump yard. Okay, I love that atmosphere. So I'll kill for it. But yeah, I just a lot of great non-diegetic sound. He loves industrial
Mm.
noise. I love industrial
Right, right.
noise. So
Industrial noises is like, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
but
It's
it's
like
such a great atmospheric thing for a film like this. Also, like even I know it's an
Mm.
Eraserhead, but even in this, the desolation of that whole
right,
of
right.
London. I mean, the only other film I
Mm.
could think of while watching this in terms of look comes about 14, 15 years later, and that's Mike Lee's Naked. That's in terms of
Hmm.
how
Right.
destitute and how
Filthy. Yeah,
desolate it absolutely looks like.
yeah,
It feels
yeah,
like the end
yeah.
of the world, essentially.
Right.
So yeah. Chris, you're nodding your head. Are you wanting to speak? And I'm just
No,
babbling, so you have
the
not been able to
no,
speak.
no. The industrial noise also made me like think so much about the scenes of him showing factory work also as well,
Mm,
right? There's also very much focus on the body itself, even outside of John
yeah.
Merrick, like of embodied experience and of the act or the focus on bodies. And there's also such a certain critique, like Ajit is pointing out of Victorian of the Victorian era, particularly of industrialism. So there's that industrialization. There's an entire scene where Anthony Hopkins' character is introduced, treating a patient who got injured by
Yeah.
a factory machine. So I think
Hmm.
there are very interesting things that are happening simultaneously, but also like that is quite fascinating. But also to the point of what Arjit was saying about bullying. I think for me, again, with my sort of queer theory perspective,
Hmm.
because I've looked at the world from both ends of that this thing, like at looking at another and the act of realizing that I am another.
Yeah.
That I think for me is why my conflict happens with the film, because again, like you said, if it had stayed with that first half ka perspective, where it is very much that what is the normative look
Yeah,
at
which
the
I think,
other.
which I also said that the film's title is not John Merrick, it's the Elephant Man, which is,
Exactly.
yeah.
So like it's like, okay, a terrible example, and shoot me for bringing this up again,
I
but
will,
when we were
because I
talking
know.
about Emilia Perez, you said something much more provocative would be to name the film as Emilia Perez's dead name. At least that
Oh,
it's
like,
acknowledging
oh,
then.
half and half. Emilia, whatever
Yeah.
it was.
So at least then it's acknowledging a certain the perspective of the film itself.
Where
So
it's
for
like
me, like,
conflicted about that identity, not about, yeah.
about this thing, but again, then that even though you are saying that it never says that we understand the world from his perspective, but very well, when you shift the focus just to John Merrick, you're very much saying that there is something about, his
I
experience,
still felt a distance, I guess. The only thing I'll defend, not defend, I mean, I was both, it's not a good thing in the
hmm,
context of the film, but I did still feel a slight distance. I didn't
yeah.
feel the film was ever saying that or pathologizing him or, there's this one moment towards the end which he says where I was like, I don't know about that. But apart from that,
Hmm.
there, where are my notes? Where are my notes? Keep on speaking, Chris. Sorry, I'll find them.
No, so the thing also that you're talking about, and you are the one to dumb down, so I'm going to say it a little bit more fancy. But when you're talking about these boundaries of knowledge, what we call them are the epistemic boundaries. Like, how does your
Sorry,
construction
I
of
made the, oh my God, that word is back. Sorry, face.
again, sorry, philosophy student, but as
I
in
think
a
you're,
very
I think you're just happy to be talking sense after yesterday. So yes, go ahead. Sorry.
the very construction of knowledge, like, what it's not just what does one know and what doesn't know, what can one know through one's
Yeah.
worldview is also fundamentally, I think, again, questioned in the first half. But when you abandon Anthony Hopkins' character, you are trying to transgress that that boundary, but then you can't do it.
Yeah.
And so then what you're essentially showing that you're failing, you're constantly failing at
Sure.
it. And I think
I,
that is what leaves me a
yeah.
bit bitter about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and okay, so you've come back to pooping the party on the Elephant Man, but okay. No, I was about to say if people are sort of slightly confused about what Chris and me are saying in terms of the boundary, and I'm confused about the what was it?
Episteme.
Epistemic.
I don't.
Epistemic,
I
yes.
actually don't know what it means, but it sounded very
Chris,
strange.
So episteme is knowledge. Episteme is to do
yeah,
with knowledge. So in
Okay,
epistemo
okay.
philosophy,
epistemological. What is it?
epistemology
Yes,
epistemology is the
yes.
study of knowledge
Knowledge.
itself. So how
Right,
is
right,
knowledge
right.
constructed,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
on
yeah.
and so
So
forth. Yeah.
I'm not saying Chris is pretentious. I'm just saying that he's using fancy vocab. That's it. Which is no, no. But my point was that if anyone is confused about what we are
Hmm.
talking about in terms of the boundaries and the
Yeah.
limits of knowledge and everything, can I just recommend to you guys to go and see not even 5 minutes, 3 minutes of Claire Denis' Chocolat, which is 1988.
Hmm.
It
Bro,
has
Acha, sorry,
it
sorry. You go ahead. No, no,
no,
no.
no, sorry. It has this about 6, 7 lines spoken by Denis, the child's father in it, in French, where he talks about how there is a line which the more closer you get to, the further it gets away from you. It's sort of like that. It kind of encapsulates everything about her filmography, which you should watch, but also about a lot of art film, I think, nowadays that sort of talks about perspective and talks about not just portraying um, discrimination, portraying all these things, but actually questioning how much you can portray these in narrative. So yeah, sorry. Arijit, you were saying something.
No, sorry, I have to ask. Is she your high school crush or something like? Because you
No,
never
no, no.
get
She's
the
not.
opportunity to
So I
promote
think
Claire Denis.
it's her and Terrence Malick both. I think
Yeah.
they are the ones. So what you said, right? How watching David Lynch reminds you of like these things that sort of pop into your head all of a sudden. Like those are the ones for me, I suppose.
Okay.
I
No, with
like the
Malik, I agree. With
okay.
Malik, I agree, but only till the New World. Post that, no.
You don't like Tree of Life?
No, man, I'm just like,
Okay. Okay. If you don't like that, then you hate the next three or next two or
yeah.
how
I,
much ever
I
you
I
have
didn't watch
survived.
that Hidden Life. I intend
Hidden
to.
Life you might like, because if you don't like the
But
other Tree of Life and everything
yeah,
plus
but
that,
I get
yeah.
your point. The initial like Thin Red Line
Oh
and all
yeah,
the
yeah. I mean,
crazy,
my favorite is the Thin Red Line. So
yeah,
yeah.
amazing film. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, we
No,
dig.
so my only reason for referencing them is because I essentially two, three images pop up every 3 hours in my head from these two filmmakers. So and I think both of them sort of mark a different sort of way, as you said, change in thinking. Terrence Malick is my gateway into art cinema, and Claire Denis is not a gateway into any form of cinema, but it's a sort of cinema I realize I respond to a lot more than I thought I did.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things. It's with the only reference, and I think the reference makes sense in this context. I'm not just you know saying ki aap like watch it for the sake of it. Anyways, I'm telling
You
you, it was
should still.
2 minutes of the film, not 2 hours of it. Anyways, but yeah, any other thoughts on the Elephant Man, guys? I think this type of narrative has been done so much now. Also, that's the other
No,
thing. I
right,
mean,
right, right,
right,
right.
it's become such a templatized thing that it's like it's always fascinating, which is why I'll remember the first half of this. Like, I know that I will, like, I know that I won't forget it. I think a similar thing happened. I'm not going to spoil this film, because for whoever's not seen, I know it's fairly old, but if there is something that happens in Ikiru, the Akira Kurosawa film,
Mm-hmm.
about midway through, where I was like, what you were saying, structure, as people go mad about structure, my
Right.
structure brain exploded at the halfway point of Ikiru, and I was like, oh my god, how have you done this? And like, in a good way, not in a sort of, this is
For
so
some
annoying.
reason, I can't remember Ikiru. I remember the story
Okay.
from which it was adapted, though.
So,
Even
so
like, yeah,
basically, the point is, I'm not going to spoil it. It's 50, I don't know how, 70 years old film,
you can't
but
spoil Ikiru anyway.
no, I think there is. I don't know. Maybe people like, but basically, Chris. You are fine with it. You anyways don't like old movies that much. Uh,
What nonsense!
What? Then
I'm
What is
kidding.
this slander?
you don't
You
like.
said you don't like Pathar Panchali, right?
That is the
That
one
is
film.
a specific film.
Sorry, I had to get
You
you.
were just categorized into like Chris doesn't like any of the 50s film.
No, 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 I'm
Like
kidding.
just
I'm
No,
kidding only.
it's a running joke in our in this podcast that I get publicly shamed for once every like
You're
like
allowed
once
to.
every like week by mandate.
No, no, I'm kidding.
no, but
I'm just saying. No, in Ikiru, essentially, the film is about a person who's terminally ill, and
Mm,
who's
Mhm.
basically decides to do something with his life before his passing. Like,
mm.
he's a government employee. I think it's a lot
Right.
about post-war Japan. I think, right, and how they were sort of trying to cope with all that stuff at that time. But no, in Ikiru, in this type of narrative, Chris, can I ask you, what do you expect in this type of narrative? What will happen if I give you?
ऐसे कौन पूछता है भाई
As
बता
in, like, what happens in a narrative about a person who's terminally ill?
what they die.
They die.
Yeah, they die. When do they die?
When the film
At the end
ends.
of the film.
Exactly.
Exactly.
That's the structure.
Exactly. So,
Right,
so
right, right.
Ikiru is not that.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that is, which also doesn't mean that he miraculously gets saved. It's not a senseless bad Bollywood movie. Also, so it's so yes. My point is that, like, it's the structure brain, right, where you're like, oh,
Right,
I know
right,
what your
right.
story is. I know I've seen this story a gazillion times now,
Yeah.
but to have that foresight in the 50s to do that, and having no one else, actually, I've never thought of anyone who's done what he's done here, actually,
Mm.
in throughout whatever. So when I watched it, I was like, Jesus Christ, I did not know this
Mm.
happens in this film. So that's as vague as I can get. Please watch Ikiru. Don't watch the British remake of it,
No, but I think
because
with
it's fine.
the Ikiru is like when it was made, I mean,
Hmm.
back then, this kind, I mean, if it's like taking the structure thing very simply,
Yeah.
introduce a character who's terminally ill, then right then you're going to know that, this guy is going to die at the end of the film.
Yes.
That's the straight linear narrative. But I think back when Ikiru was made, this was not a very popular sort of stuff because it was taken
Hmm.
from the Tolstoy story.
Okay.
And people were more acquainted with the literature, and that's also a very heavy-handed literature. I mean, a Tolstoy
Yep.
Yeah.
story is usually not. So I think it worked in that sense.
Sure.
I mean, like Chris, I also am not in connect with old movies. I mean, I love
Really?
films. Yeah, I mean, nowadays I
No, no,
don't really.
I'm kidding with he loved what was it, the Powell Pressburger thing you watched? Red Shoes.
Red shoes, no?
Red Shoes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
I love the Powell film as well. Like
Yeah.
the one that was
I
made
mean,
after
I think they
Psycho.
are one of the old filmmakers who are very modern, actually,
Right,
in most
right,
of their films.
right,
So yeah, they're most of their films just like fly by, even in terms of their pacing and like just everything. I think they're really
right,
good.
right.
But
Anyway.
no, I was throwing shade on Chris for no reason. He doesn't like Pathar Panchali, and that's totally fine.
Okay,
All of
so
us
Chris,
It's not that I
Chris,
don't like it. It's why are you slandering it?
no,
You
but
don't
Chris,
like it.
if it's any consolation, there is a filmmaker called Q. He goes by the
Hmm.
goes by the name Q. He's Kaushik Mukherjee. He's a Bengali filmmaker.
Hmm.
He also said the same thing. He doesn't like any of Ray's films, and so he was like totally shamed by the
He
whole
was
internet.
chastised, probably, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
totally, totally. He was like sent to prison sort of thing,
yeah,
made him an outcast by the whole Bengali community.
yeah,
But essentially, what his point was, he said that I'm a man from 90s, so
yeah.
my
Hmm.
politics and everything starts from 90s. What happens before that, I'm not concerned about it.
Okay.
So all those things
Yeah.
are dated. Craft wise, I don't have a complaint. They were great
Mhm.
people, great, highly skilled
I mean,
craftsperson.
I mean, he's not
Right,
interested in it as opposed to like
right,
he's saying the
right.
No,
film
I
is
think
bad.
what is being missed out here for Arijit is the context in which
Okay.
that
But
happened.
I don't think the
Is
context will make it better for Arijit. So I think
and that's what I'm telling it makes it much worse, which is the fact that I watched Om Shanti Om, Ae Dil Hai Mushkil, and Tismar Khan around that film, and I gave all of them big, like better ratings
Oh my
than
God.
Pathay Panchali.
yeah. So I mean, Chris is not helping himself also. So it's you
I
can't do anything about it. So
Yeah, I'm just
anyways,
like, don't stick your neck out for me when you don't know what you're doing.
No,
I'm
I
kidding.
loved Om Shanti Om as well, but when I was in school, I don't like it
No,
anymore.
you like it, Arijit. Still, I think.
I'm writing my
I think you
master's
like it.
thesis on it, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really
He's
like
writing his
that.
master's thesis on Farah Khan. So yeah.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that's as good as making the Elephant Man, I mean,
Right, but
No, I mean, if we want to come down to like QID level, I can make a very blasphemous comparison for
where are you
no,
going
but
with
it
this?
is
I'm
genuinely an
not going
uphill
there.
task.
No, but
Arijit, I have written essays on Farah Khan also. ऐसा नहीं है. I think
Really?
she's a good
no, no,
filmmaker. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll send you some if
Oh
you're
my God.
interested. I mean, Om
no.
Shanti Om is essentially Vertigo. Sorry,
So
it is.
Sort of,
according to you,
sort
let's
of,
go there. Is
right,
Ae Dil Hai Mushkil?
No,
Let's
but
not
I see
leave that
Vertigo in
out.
every film I like. So it's one of those
right,
things.
right. Now, Ae Dil Hai
I,
Mushkil is like every college love story. I mean, there's
no,
nothing.
no, no. I would disagree. But anyways, this is anyways
We would
touchy
disagree,
topic.
Dhruv. Don't.
Touchy topic. Anyways, Chris, what were you saying?
No, but to the Elephant Man, now we're gonna
Huh.
make a blasphemous comparison. Is that we were talking about biopics in general, right? Like how, like I still like some template biopics. Like I'm a big fan of the Imitation Game, the Benedict Cumberbatch one,
Older ones,
just
yeah, yeah.
because of personal reasons. But like the one time when I watched a biopic and I was like, this is doing something really interesting was Monkey Man last year, which I
Oh
thought
yeah, yeah,
was
yeah.
just insanely good, just
Monkey
because it.
Man,
Yeah, Monkey Man. No, the Monkey Man. No, what
Rocket
is Monkey
Man.
Man? Not
No,
Rocket
Rocket
Man,
Man.
right?
The one is
Monkey Man
the
is a Dev
Robbie.
Patel
No, no,
film.
Not
Robbie
Monkey Man.
Williams
Arey, what
wali.
is
The
its
one with the
name?
monkey face.
Yeah, what's it? It's called Monkey Man. What is it called?
No,
This is called
Monkey Man is a
Monkey
Uh,
Dev
Man.
Patel film.
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah.
what is the? Sorry, not that. What
The
Better
Which
better,
Man?
one?
better
Better Man.
man. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
I was like
sorry.
Monkey
Better
Man.
Man.
I'm like Dev Patel
Sorry,
lived that
my
life.
Better Man, which is the biopic of Robbie Williams, because I mean, there are still like templatey things to it, but it throws all this idea of sympathizing with the main character and
Sure.
that sort of very traditional thing out, and because you start with your character being a monkey in a
Mhm.
musical and does all sorts of really, again, surrealist
I mean, it's about
ish
capturing the
imagery with.
essence of the person, not the person itself, literally. It's very simple, actually, in that sense. Simple as
No,
in it's hard to execute, but like the ethos of it is simple. That,
yeah.
yeah. वो छावा की तरह नहीं है कि, I mean, sorry, I've not seen the film.
So,
Oh, sorry, I'll cut this out. Sorry.
नो वो सर कल हो चुका है वो सारा कट करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my point is merely that it's that sort of thing. If you're able to do it from like if you're not essentially not making a hagiography, then you
Yeah.
can do something really interesting out of it. That was all
Yeah,
my
I mean,
point.
it's more to do with, I think, just I like I know everyone who is like faithful to what happened in real life, really antsy and really mean to social network, but
Oh, I
that
love
is
that.
so. I mean, but it isn't reality. But I don't really care. I mean,
Exactly.
just like if that is the drama you're creating from reality, please do more of that because I love it. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things. But preference, everyone has their own preference. Arijit, you were saying something?
No.
Okay, okay, fine. I was just wondering, I was just asking because if you want to say anything blasphemous, I'm sure it won't be as bad as we have already said.
No.
Because we are quite bad.
I'm usually like, I mean, I'm usually conditioned to speak very, in a very politically appropriate tone because in real life, what I do is when I'm with my friends and all,
It all goes out of the window.
most often, yeah, more often than not, yeah, I'm not a very pleasant person to be around. So I'm very mindful when I'm speaking in podcasts, like, or somewhere on the record.
I mean, we've not been mindful, so it's fine.
Not a
So,
chance.
yeah, I
Again,
mean, it's again, it's
if
there's so much self censorship in general. I'm like, why would you censor
No,
yourself?
but I mean, the thing in film school is if you just throw
Oh
casually throw
God, film
something
school is
like,
a
oh,
nightmare.
yeah, so they'll be like,
God.
how can you say this? Yeah, you can't make a film yourself. I know I can't, but does that take away my right to speak about
Right,
it?
you're watching a movie. You're allowed to say what you think of
Right,
it. You
right,
spend your
yeah.
time on it. As
So,
simple as that. I
I
mean,
feel
again,
very, yeah,
if you want to be taken seriously, then sure, you make a persuasive argument about it. That's as simple as that. That is what
yeah.
watching
No,
and
the problem is, people mix up these two things. Making a film and watching
for
another person's
different. Yeah,
film. Yeah, these are different
hmm,
things.
I think people who make films find it harder to critique stuff. I'm guessing because they
yeah.
probably and how is the Because I know people talk about how emotional connection becomes a difficult thing because then you're looking at technicalities most of the time.
It was
Hmm.
for me for quite a long time,
Sure.
but now I've gotten rid of it because now when
I
I'm watching,
actually think
yeah.
I know I'm not into making films at all, but I actually have maybe I've made it a conscious decision that I always make sure that I have something to or like if there is something of note, I actually take it like in my head in terms of the visual language. I think that's the cinema
Hmm.
studies education speaking
Mhm, mhm,
because I think
mhm.
it's the whole medium. What is the medium, right? Like it's not literally a book. If it was that, then it would be something else. But yeah,
Yeah.
but again, these are norms. People break norms
Hmm.
in films all the time.
No,
There's no
the
like,
technicality of the craft stuff, it's like, I mean, if more or less the films we are watching, it's obviously it's craft wise or technically
oh,
these are very
Arijit, please,
solid films.
you have not seen Nadaniya then.
Unless no, no, I was actually going to say unless it's a Christopher Nolan film,
Okay.
unless it's Tenet. Yeah, Tenet.
I
It's
like it, Arijit. We are on the same
I
side on this
also
one. I do
like.
not. No, no, I
Tenet.
like it. I mean, I like Arijit, your opinion. I do
Ah,
not
okay. I
like
don't.
Tenet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
Tenet,
don't
Tenet,
like Tenet
Tenet just
at
killed
all.
my eardrums. I mean, I was like, oh my God,
Oh, yeah.
what
I mean,
is this film? I mean, it's craft-wise bad. I mean, anyway.
but don't understand it, right?
Yeah,
Feel it.
yeah, yeah,
Whatever.
yeah.
Trash. How do I feel
Yeah,
that?
I felt it and I felt worse after that. So,
I've tried 3 times, so I'm not going back to bat for it
three
ever.
times. Oh
3 times
man.
I've tried to like that. I've read people being like waxing lyrical about it. I'm like, I just don't see it. I'm
No,
sorry.
which is why I was actually skeptical about Oppenheimer, but
You
surprisingly
really
that
loved
came out,
Oppenheimer.
yeah,
I'm the
surprisingly
coldest on
that,
Oppenheimer here, which
yeah, surprisingly
weird.
that
Yeah.
came out very good. But I was actually very skeptical. But yeah, usually, I mean, that's what I'm talking. If I'm watching, like, say, for example, The Monkey, I mean, it
Oh
has to be really
God.
good. Yeah, I mean, I'm speaking technically, it has to be good. I can't critique that. So I have gotten rid of that whole thought from my mind
Sure.
that if I'm watching
Hmm.
a film, I'm purely watching it for, I mean, as an audience or
Yeah, I
critic,
just
whatever
feel
it is.
some of
Yeah.
like I just maybe sorry this might go into the episode because last time also we went on a good deviation about modern trends and filmmaking, because it sort of bleeds in rather well. Which is why when this David Lynch movie started, I was like, oh my God, like it's just like you feel like a relief. It's like oh, this is
Hmm.
like well paced and like especially the first. I was just like this is wonderful. I have like people are giving time for people to actually speak and I can listen and just normal good solid filmmaking. And I'm not generally someone who's very much oh look at the past and watch everything in the no new
Hmm.
movies also have that. It's just so much contemporary crap also has the other stuff. I honestly think Nadania has broken me for this year. So
Sir,
I'm
you have
taking a
not seen Jewel Thief. It's not as bad, but it's
whatever.
still
I think
something
I
that.
have a temporary breakup with modern cinema just because of that movie. Because
Yeah.
I was appalled. I was
But
genuinely appalled.
why would you watch such a film? I
So,
mean,
so Arijit, I think me and Chris are I won't say I'm the,
I'm worried about you, Dhruv. With these are sadistic tendencies. Like,
no, no, I,
You're saying that to him.
yeah,
You don't know what I put
I
myself
have
through.
like
I'm
genuine
the,
concerns.
no, I'm saying I'm not the target audience for it, but I generally have a softer corner or soft, or like more of an appreciation for really silly rom-coms because I grew up
Mm.
with them, a lot of silly ones, and I'm like fine with them. Like, I get the time pass mentality, which I know can be grating for other people. I'm just like, fine, I'll take it.
But then watch Lava Ajkal 2, not like Nadania. You're like,
No.
No, 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 no. I have also watched that twice, Harijit. That is a disaster too. None of this
I
is good.
watched it once and wanted to bleach my eyes.
No, no, no.
Please.
I know. I think what I was getting at is competence, nothing else.
Mhm.
Actually,
Right.
like to me,
Mm.
when I watched that film, I was like, basic competence you just need to have when you put a film
Mm.
out in the world. इतनी खुद के लिए तो self respect रखनी पड़ेगी. I'm sorry.
Right. Right.
Like I'm like there's a lot of times you can get you can. I think some people can make an argument कि आपने तो picture नहीं, like you haven't made a movie. How can you? I'm like, I am sure if
By
I
that
ever
logic,
release a
yeah.
movie, I will not. अगर वो if it is this bad in any capacity, I will not release it.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. It's I'm tired of like incompetence. I don't
Someone
want that.
mentioned that it's made through AI or something like that. I was
No,
like,
but AI
what?
can't be this incompetent. That's the other thing. Like, it's one of those things. It's proper human incompetence. So I mean,
No, but the
it's
whole if you're not a film, if you have not made a film, you can't. It's so dumb because then you can't have then art criticism does not exist. Like anything you can
you're
point
living
to.
in India at the point where criticism doesn't exist. Art
Right.
criticism, though,
Right.
of course,
Right.
doesn't
It's
exist.
like a very privileged sort of thing. The privilege,
No,
art
I'm
criticism.
still in academia, so it's like slightly better, let's just say, but
Academia
it's
is there itself is a big thing abhi tak. When you never know when it sort of gets taken out. And anyways, sorry for the cynicism to end this because Elephant Man ends on a rather positive note as opposed to
Actually,
a
yeah.
cynical one.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
As opposed to
Really
most of
beautiful
his films,
image also.
actually.
No, not Mulholland Drive.
Not
Sorry for
Mulholland. Yeah,
spoiler.
not Mulholland. Yeah, yeah,
That's got a really horrifying, operatically
yeah,
horrifying
yeah.
ending. But anyways, Blue Velvet also has an ironic happy ending, I would think. But anyways,
Mm.
we'll talk about all
Is
that.
it happy? No, I don't know. I mean, let's.
Ironic.
Oh, huh. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because it's the
Mm.
Robins who start.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's
Yeah.
again. We'll talk about it next. That is our next film to be discussed. After that comes Wild at Heart. Again, to remind people, we are not skipping Dune just because we have talked about Dune on an episode where we discussed the Denis Villeneuve Dune also. Spoilers for Lynch fans. We like the Villeneuve Dunes more than Lynch's Dune. Though, if you are, please,
Yeah, but
if someone
don't you
watches Lynch's
guys
Dune,
feel like? Sorry.
I
Yeah.
was about to say, if anyone wants to watch Lynch's Dune, like if someone is following with us his filmography, someone does want to watch Lynch's Dune, please watch it and let us know if there is something which is great that I'm missing. I don't think I'll see it ever again, but
I
I
should
will
get
hear
my
you.
supervisor to talk about it.
Yeah, you should because he likes it, and I'm just like, I don't understand you, but I will hear you, and I will not see the movie again because that
I
second half is
mean,
never ending.
Lynch's Dune
Honestly,
might be bad,
yeah.
but Villeneuve's Dune honestly feels like a theme park.
Theme park. No, no,
Get when this.
I'm not a fan of part one. I like part two. So it's one of
Okay,
those things. So
okay.
I think part one is very dreary and boring.
Yeah,
For
I watched
whatever that means.
part one. I kind of liked it, but I mean, for me, I mean, most of Villeneuve's these like Blade Runner and all these films,
He is a cold, sterile
yeah,
sort
it
of
feels very
filmmaker in
theme
general.
parky sort of. I mean,
So some people are getting so good, Arijit.
why
You're
do you
also in
need
people's
to
bad
make?
books.
Yeah, I mean, why do you need to make another Blade Runner when Ridley Scott has already made a masterpiece? And also, by the way, it's one of the greatest stories also by Philip Dick. I mean,
I
the story
mean,
was amazing.
okay, so
Great book,
we'll
yeah.
keep a Ridley Scott discussion someday because I have such wonderful thoughts about. There's only one film of his I like truly love. I think, but apart from that,
Gladiator?
I'm Alien actually.
Alien is also
That's
great.
the
Yeah, yeah.
only film I've
But
never seen Gladiator, but his recent output I've just been so put off by that I have a negative impression, I suppose,
yeah, recently,
of
I mean,
Scott. But anyways, someday else he probably is producing 500 other things and releasing something.
you you can call him the Sanjay Bhansali of Hollywood.
Oh God. I wouldn't.
We
But
were
Sanjay
literally
Bhansali
bitching
doesn't have
about
an alien in
Sanjalina
him.
Bhansali, like
Minus the
we were
Goomer.
we were literally bitching about him like just before we started this
No,
recording.
but I mean, we are not fans of him, but I know people really like Sanjay Bhansali. I've never
Yeah,
clicked with his work much at
yeah,
all.
me too.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
but no, I mean, I would say that he's never made an Alien, because Alien is a masterpiece, I think. But anyways, but we are not talking about it. Sorry, but there'll be sort aliens of sorts in many forms in Lynch's films throughout, and especially series. So you'll see all that. Hopefully, as we are seeing it or rewatching it and talking about them. Let's see who all joins us next time. I would love to have someone, but then that's the whole thing. I would love to have people who don't
Like,
love
right.
film, which I'm very it's very easy for me to understand why someone would not like a Lynch film. Like, to me, it's not a mystery, a great mystery, like, why someone doesn't like a David Lynch film. I can see someone not clicking with his sensibilities, very simply in that way. But let me see if I can find people who don't like Blue Velvet, and bring them. Chris, you can bring someone from your class, but everyone
They all
supposedly likes
liked
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, shocking people. Anyways, again, this joke is also never going to end, but fine. So, Arijit, this is in reference to essentially his classmates
Okay.
not finding La Jetée by Chris Marker, quote unquote, mid, and then liking David Lynch films. And I was just like,
E-
that's very strange. I'm like, either you like, I couldn't compute it,
Tricky,
but anyways.
tricky domain.
Very, very. I'm just like, and also, Rajat is not meat. But like, that's
I
fact. That's not opinion. That is fact. Sorry, I'm just putting that out there. But fine. Anyways, we've babbled about a lot of stuff which might not go into this episode. But thank you so much for listening to this episode we had on the Elephant Man. I know Chris and me were slightly more critical about some stuff, but of course it comes. This is the first time we both have watched. Ariji, this is the first time you watched it, or is this a rewatch you did for the
I
episode?
mean, this is a rewatch. This is a
Okay, so
rewatch.
this is the first time I watched it, and I think Chris also watched it.
And
So
the
I think this
last
is
time
very much the first one.
I had watched was I was like pretty much enamored by Lynch's works, so
Sure,
that sort of doesn't count maybe anyway. I
sure,
mean, I didn't have the critical eye, or I mean, it was sort of those early days of
sure. Got it.
voracious cinephile sort of those kind
Yeah,
of things.
when we were all uncynical, I
Right,
suppose.
right, totally,
Yeah,
totally, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
May those days return, which basically means I need to stop watching films for a year now and then return to them. Anyways, please tell us what you thought of the film, if you've seen it, why you think we are wrong. You can use words like epistemology, and you'll be on par with us, I suppose. And yeah, please, I'll plug in the new episodes that are dropping. They'll be dropping fast, I suppose, if I get the file that Varun has recorded, so I can release it for the world to suffer too. And yeah, we'll see you next on the end of next month and talk about Blue Velvet in full.
By which time, hopefully, Spurs will have won the
Oh,
Europa.
oh
Hopefully.
no, we don't end it on this. How do I put? I'll probably have to put a Spurs clip now.
Bullshit. Total fucking bullshit.